Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. Day 7 of Chucktober. Yes, we have completed the first full week of Chucktober and are ending the review run of Chucky movies before diving into the 24 episodes of the Chucky TV series. Hashtag renew Chucky, hashtag review Chucky, and I guess now hashtag save Chucky. So this follows Curse of Chucky, continuing from the threads of that film. When I watched Curse of Chucky the other night, I stayed up like maybe up to 50 minutes past midnight, or maybe 45 or so, and then watched the rest of the morning. But for Cult of Chucky, last night, I felt really tired by 10 p.m. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to wait till the morning to watch all of this. And so that's what I did. Released August 24th, 2017 at Fright Fest, September 9th, 2017 at Motel X Lisbon International Horror Film Festival, and release October 3rd, 2017 on DVD, Blu-ray, and video on demand, or whatever you call it. And this continues the trend of Curse of taking the elements from previous films, even some of the stuff that maybe didn't work for some people, and recontextualizing them in a way that works for the current story. I really like how these films do not just erase past installments like Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films have, because depending on the context, there might be valid arguments for the reasoning behind those. But for here, I think it's really impressive and doesn't feel so lazy just discarding everything. It's like, yes, everything counts, everything's all part of the same continuity, and we're making it work in such a creative way. And so you get these returning characters and it kind of converges, well, somewhat. And yeah, I really appreciate that approach here. So, Cult of Chucky begins with Andy Barclay. We saw him in the post credit scene of Curse of Chucky. Of course, depending on the version and I guess how you watch it and whatnot. So, for those who did not see the post credit scene, this might have been confusing, starting with him and showing clips recapping the post credit scene while he's talking. It actually begins with a shot of a really tall building, and I feel like the way it's angled is probably meant to be an homage to how the poster for the original Child's Play film looked, with the tall building and the falling body, I think might have been on it. Um, but yeah, I definitely got those vibes. Andy is on a date, and his date, she is not so sure about him. He talks about, he's not a gun fanatic. He believes in gun control and background checks and stuff like that, but wants something to protect himself. And she has this line that doesn't feel very real, like very convincing. She's like, "You have a dark past," or something like that. But yeah, it goes into how when he was 6, Maggie, like I mentioned, falling out of the building, his babysitter died, and she asked, and they never caught the killer, and he was like, "Let's just say justice was served," and that feels too sketchy, and it's probably what scared her away. But yeah, Andy, after the date, this date pretty much ends. He ends up going to the cabin. I guess he doesn't live in an apartment anymore. Maybe he moved, or maybe he's always had this cabin just in case. Maybe he goes between, depending on the circumstances. I don't know, but he goes to the cabin, and there's this framed sweater, some Kent Military Academy swag. It has the logo on it, so little nod to Child's Play 3. Again, one of the negatively received installments of the franchise, but they make it work with the context of who Andy is now. He went to that military academy, and that explains how he's good with like using guns and stuff like that, how he got those skills. So, but he takes down the frame, and behind it is a safe, and so he puts in the code, and this is where we see that he still has the head of the scarred Chucky doll who tried killing him at the end of Curse of Chucky in that post-credit scene. He's had him for a few years now, and he has like a thing covering his mouth, and he takes it off. He's like, "Well, guess it's just you and me," and they both like smoke together. And Chucky says some remarks. He's trying to be funny and sort of making fun of Andy, and then Andy's like, "All right, you want to play? Let's play. There's nothing like spending time with your best friend." And he gets a blowtorch, and Chucky is like, "F you!" And he gets a blowtorch and starts torturing him. Well, you hear Chucky screaming, and this was such it was such a 180 from what we thought happened at the end of Curse of Chucky. We looked at that as a happy ending, like, oh, Andy finally ended Chucky for good, and that's going to be the end of the entire franchise. Maybe future installments will take place prior to that scene, but no, it turns out he still has PTSD and unresolved issues. But it also makes sense that he would keep Chucky captive here. If he kills Chucky, maybe someone would try bringing his soul back in some other doll body, perhaps. So he has Chucky secured and um, under his watchful eye, so he makes sure that he can't do any harm. And then we go into this opening credits sequence, montage of some stuff related to the events of Curse of Chucky, so bring us back up to speed with what happened with Nika, and again accompanied by Joseph LaDuca's excellent score. It feels like a mix of what we heard in Curse of Chucky, like if that mixed with the music of Psycho, which really fits because of the mental institution setting that we get in this film. We see like articles. Apparently, there's one from January 8th, 2013, talking about Alice, Nika's 6-year old niece during Curse being the sole survivor of a family massacre. And it mentions that the events of Curse took place the week before that. So I guess Curse of Chucky took place the first week of January. So not quite as close to 25 years after Child's Play 1 if that took place in November. But, if Chucky was probably just taking the year into account, 88 to 2013 during that film. And there's another article from April saying maybe April 7th or something like that. It was sometime in April where it mentions that Nika is ruled insane. And so that's when that trial sequence at the end of Curse of Chucky took place. So 6 months after that would be when the post-credit scene takes place. And so Nika, we catch up back to her in the present, and we see her conversation with Dr. Foley, and I realized recently that Foley is probably a reference to how, Foley in French means madness, like Joker, Foley, adieu, shared madness, which, speaking of which, I am gonna put out a little video sharing my thoughts on Joker, Foley, adieu, between things. Um, I mentioned there were some things that I like that it touched upon, but there were a couple moments where I kind of zoned out during that movie because it was getting really late and whatnot. And, uh, you know, I was reminded of a couple things that happened. And so I kind of see the cracks where people are coming from with the negativity on it. So it's a complicated beast. I'll talk about it in its own video sometime soon. But yeah, Nika says Chucky was a figment of my imagination, and you kind of wonder, does she actually believe this, or is she just going along like so that she can get out as soon as she can. So Dr. Foley says he's having her transferred to Harrogate, which is a mental institution where the majority of this film takes place. And we get to know some of the other patients there. One of them has multiple personalities. And despite him not being all there, it is kind of nice that he believes Nika. They even have, uh, they even, have a thing together for a scene, which I mean, okay, whatever. Um, and then there are also like a couple other members of this group, and they argue back and forth and whatnot. And we also have nurse Ashley, and I think Carlos is also a nurse, or maybe he has another occupation. He mentions how his husband has MS, but he also doesn't want um, I almost said Fiona because she's played by Fiona Durr. That he tells Nika not to see him as a friend, but he gives her like sticks of gum. So like these mixed messages, it's like very weird. But at some point, one of the patients ends up with a Chucky doll. It's a patient dealing with the death of her child, if I remember correctly. I saw it this morning, but yeah. But then they also get a visit from, uh, you know, Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany as Jennifer Tilly. But weirdly, when she arrives, she says her name is, Miss Valentine, and I don't know why she wouldn't just use the Jennifer Tilly identity. Nika even says that she looks familiar, and she's like, "You look kind of like Jennifer Tilly," and I have wondered, like, in this moment, does Nika remember when in Curse of Chucky, Chucky says, uh, I've known some families, the Barclays, the Kincaids, the Tillys, but it's been a while and she's undergone treatment and stuff, so maybe she forgot about that moment. But later on, she does remember the name Valentine and how it's the last name of Chucky's girlfriend, Tiffany Valentine. But in this scene, she mentions that she had been taking care of Alice. Like, I guess after the death of Alice's grandmother, she ended up adopting her. But she mentions that Alice is dead and that it was from a broken heart. And Dr. Foley is taken aback because he's like, "Why didn't you tell me this? This, element of like this whole thing." Um, and she acts like she's been going through a lot. But she gives Nika the Chucky doll. So we have two Chucky dolls in this facility now, which gets Nika paranoid and thinking that, Chucky's gonna wreak havoc, which he does. And I remember the first time I watched this, I was really confused. Like, how is Chucky with Andy and yet also in Harrogate? There's even a scene where, we cut back to Andy who's watching footage of when he went to go visit Dr. Foley on November 1st, 2013. So, the Chucky doll got delivered to him in October that year. And yeah, like this is why I say that the whole birthday thing, seeing his mom for his birthday was for an early celebration because his birthday would have to be like a week after this visit, like his actual birthday. But yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, like, did Andy just set down like his phone to like video record this whole interaction? Um, but yeah, he tried showing the head of the scarred Chucky to Dr. Foley, trying to prove Nika's innocence, but Dr. Foley thinks it's just like animatronic trickery, and so Andy is escorted out. And he's also eating cereal while rewatching this clip, which maybe that's like a little nod to when he made breakfast for his mom at the beginning of the first film. Chucky's like, let's watch it again. That's always a classic. So you know that he watches this frequently, and Chucky's trying to convince Andy that maybe he's crazy and all of this is in his head. And I guess maybe the film is trying to convince us that Andy never saw the scarred Chucky and maybe he's imagining all this, but it never really convinced me. But in the facility at Harrogate, we get all these deaths that are caused by Chucky, and Dr. Foley at one point tries to put Nika at ease by putting a lighter under the hand of one of the Chuckies, and so we get the fingers sort of melted and looking more like claws. So that helps us to distinguish the two Chuckies, and but Chucky wreaks havoc. He uses compressed air to break the glass above one of these patients, and which the glass ends up beheading her. And he also eventually takes out his one of these dolls takes out its arm and puts it in the throat of the other patient who kept seeing Chucky as like her child, and um, seemed to have a breakthrough at some point, but of course, like in the end, she's not well at all, it seems. And we do get more of Chucky quipping here and there. Like maybe people miss that during Curse of Chucky. So we do get a good mix of horror and humor. And the cinematography, again, this is written and directed by Don Mancini. The cinematography feels improved from Curse. I liked it in Curse, but here it feels like it's expanded a bit. Between films, Dawn had directed a couple episodes of Hannibal season 3, and I can imagine some of these shots like being in Hannibal, like they feel like they're straight out of it, with the snow and the falling glass in slow motion, the crossfade. Like I really do think Dawn carried over some of that stylization into this film. It looks really cool. There's even a mention of the Hannibal TV show where one of the Chuckies is like, I can't believe they canceled that show. And yeah, Hannibal is one of my favorite shows. It does a great job of remixing the source material from the books and the other films. And, I really wish it could have continued, even though I had mixed feelings on the final episode that aired. But at this point, it's been so long that I've made my peace with it. So, but hey, maybe Chucky can still be saved. Uh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So yeah, there are these. So now one of these Chucky dolls has one arm, but also has a drill. And we also find out that Nika sometimes gets hypnotized by Dr. Foley. And I really like LaDuca's uh, scoring here for the theme titled Hypnosis. And so we find out that Dr. Foley takes advantage of Nika during these incidents. It's like, whoa, like he's evil too, and Chucky even compares himself to him, and it's like, yeah. And at one point, Nika has a nightmare, sees Alice. I guess this would be like an 11-year-old Alice, who sort of taunts her and says, "We've been waiting for you." And then we see a giant Chucky. So really like nightmare fuel. And in his knife, you see a reflection. And I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be Nika's reflection or Charles Lee Ray's human face, because father daughter, they look so similar. But Alice also wears these red shoes in the nightmare, which are a bit of Nika's subconscious trying to tell her something. What we learn later is that Dr. Foley likes putting these red shoes on Nika, and Nika gets confronted by these Chucky dolls. Well, this is after Andy sees an online article. I think it's like dated January 24th, 2017 or something. The Chucky TV series kind of complicates some of the chronology here. But yeah, he sees the news article is about the stuff going on at Harrogate, and he's like, "What the?" And the Chucky head, the scarred Chucky, is like, "Did you think I was the only one?" And then Andy opens up, another thing and gets out a different Chucky doll that has like a haircut. Um, and so we see Andy driving toward Harrogate. He gets a call from Tiffany. She's like, "I'm Tiffany, Jennifer. Who's keeping track these days?" And Andy's like, "I know who you are. I'm coming for you." And it looks all cinematic the way it like shows the car on the road surrounded by snow. It's kind of cool, and the intense music. Um, and when Andy gets to Harrogate, he tells the guard that he needs to speak to Nika Pierce or Dr. Foley. And the guy doesn't want to let him in. And then he's like, then I want to commit myself. And the guy's like, get the hell out of here. And then it was very funny when Andy just punches the guy in the face. And then the next shot, we see that he's committed. And so he's sitting and waiting in the padded room he's in. But yeah, the Chucky with a haircut gets mailed to Dr. Foley, and he's like, "What the heck is this?" And eventually, the Chucky dolls converge, and we learn that at some point years earlier, Chucky found a spell on voodooForDummies.com that allows him to split his soul into multiple dolls. And since then I've wondered if maybe this is similar to the spell that was used to put Glenn and Glenda's soul into the two babies, splitting the soul. There was an attempt to have a mention of Glenn and Glenda in this film. Don Mancini wanted to have a line where it's revealed that Glenn ran off with his boyfriend. Glenda is in jail or in prison or something. But I guess Universal or whoever really did not want reminders of those characters or that character. But I'm kind of glad that that line was not inserted because it allowed for more freedom of how to explore the Glenn and Glenda thing in the Chucky TV series, which more on that when we get to those episodes. But yeah, these three dolls, we got the haircut one, the melted fingers one, the one armed one. The one with the drill ended up killing Carlos, and I'm not sure like the science of this, like the way that the guts spill out, but there is also like steam, I guess, because it's like super cold. Um, and yeah, like R.I.P. Carlos. So the dolls they argue over who gets to kill Andy Barclay, and one of them is like, well, look at my terrible haircut, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the worst out of what all of us went through. Like you go enjoy killing him. And then the one with the melted fingers, the one with the drill goes to stand guard, but the one with the melted fingers does a spell to possess Nika. And so we see that act of possession. Nika, because she's possessed by Chucky, is no longer wheelchair bound, can stand up, and uses the heels to stomp on Dr. Foley. Chucky as Nika is like, this is for Nika, and kills Dr. Foley. So in a way, it's like justice is done, but at the expense of Nika's agency. Like she didn't get to experience the act of justice. Like maybe she would have wanted Dr. Foley to get caught and imprisoned and to have to be punished for his crimes. So it's a really twisted ordeal here. And meanwhile, the short haired Chucky goes over to Andy's cell. And uh, I don't know why Andy tries walking toward him all calmly, but knowing who Chucky is, but he throws is a knife or a screwdriver. He throws something at his leg, and they sort of they struggle a bit, and then Andy holds Chucky against a wall and does like reaches into Chucky's guts to get a gun that he had hidden inside of this doll. Chucky's like, he sent me, and he shoots Chucky a few times. And he's like, thanks for coming after me. You saved me the trouble. And then stomps on his head. Not too dissimilar from what happened to Dr. Foley. But yeah, it must have been cathartic for lots of fans to see Andy being able to conquer Chucky, after wishing to see him um, stop the villain who ruined his childhood and made him have to witness some murders and stuff. But Andy turns around, sees Nika, who's now possessed by Chucky, and uh, Chucky says you kill me, you kill her. Think about it. And it only takes Andy a couple seconds to just pull the trigger. Like he doesn't even he's willing to risk like Nika's life, or I'm pretty sure it would have been a fatal shot unless he was maybe, I don't know, aiming for a leg or something or an arm, and maybe it just didn't come across that way. But he's out of bullets, and there's some personnel are approaching down the hallway, and Chucky says, "Tag, you're it," and closes the door. And so Andy is trapped in this cell, and it really makes you wonder, like, what's gonna happen? What happens when this doll that has guts inside of it that would have Charles Lee Ray's DNA probably is discovered? Like what do the authorities think of this? Or when the doll dies, like, because the guts stay there, right? Or will people think that Andy took that Andy and Nika took part in all these murders at Harrogate, and that maybe Andy stuffed some of someone's guts into the doll? Like, I don't know. This is never really answered. It's kind of an unanswered thing. But Nika finds the multiple personalities guy who think multiple Malcolm, I think he's called. He thinks that he's Charles Lee Ray, and Chucky's, Chucky Nika is like in your dreams. And um, I think the drill Chucky ends him and stays behind. So Nika, Chucky possessed Nika. I don't know how to address the character. Walks outside. I don't know if this was intentional, but Nika's hair looks kind of similar to the Chucky doll's hair to me. Like a mix between that and Charles Lee Ray's human hair. And of course, when she walks out and like she looks like Charles Lee Ray, and of course, like father, like daughter, and they definitely picked up on this on making this and used that to its advantage in the Chucky TV series. But yeah, Tiffany is waiting by the car outside. She's taken out the guard. They share Tiffany and Chucky, Nika share a kiss, and when they get in the car, Tiffany mentions that she kind of misses Alice, but Chucky's like very dismissive of that. They revealed earlier to Nika that Chucky said that he had possessed Alice, and one of her victims fought back and like killed her in the act. So Alice is dead. Apparently, she got alien 3'd, I guess you could say. We never really find out who that person who attacked back was. I'm kind of surprised that that hasn't been explored. But yeah, Tiffany and Chucky drive off, and in the back seat we see the Tiffany doll, or one of them, anyway. So Tiffany was able to split her soul as well, and they drive off. And yeah, it's a pretty dark ending that just leaves you hanging. Like Tiffany and Chucky are on the run. Andy is trapped at Harrogate. Nika is possessed. It's yeah, like it's yeah. I just had no words for it. Like the first time I watched it. Like the first time I watched it, I was not sure how much I liked it because there were some unanswered questions about the possession of like multiple Chuckies at a time thing. But what we do know is that it's not a hive mind. I think that would have been too overpowered, and maybe also part of it at the time was what I didn't know for sure, like if there would be a follow up. But of course, we later got the Chucky TV series, which dealt with some of these threads. So some things are more clear, and yeah, and after more rewatches, I do think Cult of Chucky is probably my favorite of the films. So I'd give this one a 9 out of 10. It just does so many things, plays with so many elements that work, but it's also dark, and it treats the things as dark. But there are some moments of humor, the Chucky humor, and it's just an interesting mix of a lot of things that um, there are things that work and things that are fascinating to uh, think about, and but also leaves you wanting, you know, rooting for the protagonists. You're hoping that they'll go after the villains, and yeah, just the way that it continues the story. It's, it's amazing, and I do kind of miss having Chucky films. I enjoyed the TV series, but I do wonder like how could the next film, whenever that may be, play out. The next film in this continuity, I should say. And I don't know if the next film would continue threads from the TV show or if it would be a separate thing. Like I know Dawn has talked about like Chucky in space, or how he'd like to see Chucky on Elm Street meeting Freddy Krueger. I don't know how I'd feel about those ideas. It would depend on the execution. But yeah, Cult of Chucky, definitely one of the better films, and it's so fascinating to see how this has evolved and what carries over into the Chucky TV series. So, really looking forward to talking about that show. And depending on the version you watch, there is a post-credit scene where Kyle from Child's Play 2 goes to the cabin, says Andy sent me, and goes up to the Chucky, the scarred Chucky's head, is like, we're gonna have some fun, and it's basically gonna be painful for him. So yeah, we get that final credit, Christina Lee as Kyle, and again, something that continues into the Chucky TV series. And yeah, thanks for tuning in once again to Steven Shinder reviews in video form for Chucktober, and I'll see you all next time.